Well, speaking of Watts, this next question was sent in to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Joey Watts. In the WWE Network special, WWE Untold, well, this is written really interestingly. I'll read it as it's written.
You're fiending for Charlie now, aren't you?
In the WWE Network special, WWE Untold, in the Georgia Championship Wrestling, Buzz Sawyer, Soreer, Buzz Sawyer, Tommy Rich, had this cage that had a top on it, and Shawn Michaels says to creative, "Oh yeah, can we do something like this?" Well, I heard in a shoot interview it was your idea for Hell in a Cell.
Okay, I'm
also Bruce Pritchard says he came up with the idea of Kane. This is written very weirdly. Is this true? So did Bruce Pritchard come up with Kane, and did you or Shawn Michaels come up with Hell in a Cell?
Well, Bruce Pritchard is correct. He came up with the idea that The Undertaker should have a long-lost brother. That is, I don't know what details that Bruce went into from there, but that statement is a correct one. Shawn Michaels is completely full of shit. He wasn't even he wasn't in the business when Buzz Sawyer, and that was the last Battle of Atlanta in 83 or whatever. And Shawn Michaels didn't even break in until 84 because we were working with him when he was a rookie in Mid-South. He was doing jobs for us and happy to do it. But we did know he was going to be a hell of a worker. You could tell even then. No. The whole idea of the Hell in a Cell came because Bruce did have the idea and sold it to Vince that The Undertaker should have a long-lost brother that would come back and be his nemesis. And at first, we didn't know anything other than the name Kane because Bruce has always liked that name. He named one of his kids Kane. And he wanted The Undertaker's name to be Kane, which it was for about fucking 2 weeks when The Undertaker first came in.
That's right.
But we didn't know what Kane was going to look like. And I had thought, boy, it would be really cool if, since we don't really know, all we knew was going to be Glenn, but we didn't know what the outfit was going to be, right? This was Glenn Jacobs' last chance. After, imagine this, the evil dentist didn't work out and the fucking fake Diesel didn't work out. They thought it was Glenn's fault. And Vince was like, well, he just doesn't have the killer instinct. He doesn't want it. Got to go out there and get it, pal. And I was like, give him something he's not fucking ashamed to go out in public in. So anyway, this was going to be his last chance. He was going to be The Undertaker's brother, Kane. And I had thought that it would be cool if we did some type of videos heralding the arrival of Kane. Imagine, you know, the old fucking, the Halloween look, the viewpoint of the eye of Michael Myers when he's got the mask on. In other words, you would see video of a guy looking through a mask and you would hear the muffled, the breathing. And the eye holes would reveal that he was in a room and he was surrounded by walls, floor, ceiling that had nothing but pictures cut out of The Undertaker. Sort of like the environment that the priest in The Omen was trying to create for himself to keep the evil out by putting a Bible page on every, remember that scene? He's putting a Bible page on every surface, every wall, floor, ceiling, whatever, the doors, etc. If this guy had sat in this fucking room wherever and fixated about nothing but The Undertaker, and that was the way that we would first see him, we wouldn't even hear from him. We wouldn't be speaking. You would just see this video, and maybe you'd see it a couple times and do some things. And I thought that the best thing would be for him to fucking be wearing something that was fairly nondescript, not just ripping off the Michael Myers outfit, but the whole thing is that the outfit would be nondescript except for his massive size and giant muscular body, and that the whole thing would be that the mask needed to be a mask of a normal person's face, not William Shatner like Michael Myers stole, but the whole idea is because Kane, the story is that he was disfigured in a fire. I thought he should want to put a face on that was normal because he's psychologically fucked up. Am I going way too deep into this thought process? Well, I mean, not only into this thought process, but was I going too deep into trying to make this shit believable? Because then instead of that, they decided, well, Paul Bearer could be his manager and he knew where the funeral home was or whatever the fuck. But also, They sent the superhero outfits. The creative services had drawn all the red stuff and some of it was even more blatantly, Marvel or DC. It looked like at one point like he should be in the Justice League. And I was like, this ain't scaring me, but I wanted him to be more, instead of a superhero or a outrageous movie monster, I wanted him to be more of a movie psychopath that you could kind of believe was really crazy and then had some of these supernatural powers that you couldn't explain, whatever the fuck. Anyway, as we were, and I've told this story before, but since Shawn Michaels wants to fucking bullshit people some more, I don't know where that fucking came in. Otherwise, that's the only time he's ever seen a fucking cage with a top on it before. He wasn't in the NWA, so he didn't see the War Games, and he didn't work Memphis. I think they were in there for a couple weeks, and Jarrett fired them too, the Rockers. But the blow-off match between Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker, the program that they'd been running, was going to come to an end in St. Louis, and it was going to be inside a cage because that was the typical blow-off match. But I suggested several things. One, this has been no secret. It's not like I was goddamn coming up with genius shit on the spot. Talking about making an impact for a new guy that nobody's ever seen before. It's not like Kane's a big established superstar name in wrestling. We've talked about the existence of him. Nobody's ever seen him, so he's got to make an impact. Undertaker was going to lose that match, but Undertaker can't lose, and Shawn Michaels just go off on his merry little fucking prissy-prancy way and get the last word on The Undertaker unless Undertaker has other business that's distracting him. That's why that Kane was going to be introduced in this match, so that Taker could lose, but he could lose because of Kane and go in a different direction, and Michaels is going off with fucking Bret Hart for Montreal. I suggested that Kane pull the cage door off to enter the cage because that's the way that Kevin Sullivan introduced Doug Furnas, the world's strongest man, in his hometown of Knoxville, Tennessee, on Christmas night in what was in 1989, when he came out and saved the baby faces from a vicious beating locked up in a cage with the heels. He comes out and he's the world's strongest man, so he pulls the fucking cage door off, which is an impressive visual. Of course, he was a babyface then. Well, the reason why Kane can get away with this is because that's not the fucking whole point of the thing. He's not only going to rip this fucking door off that protects the integrity of the cage so people aren't just willy-nilly entering and leaving it, and nobody else has ever ripped the door off, but he's going to go in and he's going to tombstone pile drive The Undertaker with Undertaker's own move, boom, from a guy just as big as he is, and then Michaels is going to get the win when Kane fucking leaves. He's done his damage. But I said also at that time, I hated the old-fashioned WWF cage, the blue bars. I hated those things. The blue metal bars, they weighed tons. They were hard to set up. They wouldn't work with you. You try running into one of those things. You know where they used to take Flair and run him into the fucking cyclone fence? And he'd take the big fucking face bump and he'd get some color and et cetera, or any of the heels, right? You try, the chain link gives with you. You try running into that blue thing they used to have in the Hulk Hogan, King Kong Bundy days. It was solid as a fucking rock and steel. It just looked so cartoony. Chain link fence looks fucking rough. Blue steel bars looked gaga to me. They tried to give us one of those when they didn't use them anymore. Tried to give us one for OVW. I said I wouldn't have it. I wouldn't use it. And if you sent it down here, I wouldn't accept it. But anyway, instead of a cage match of this magnitude, it's pay-per-view. Cage matches have already been done to death. Let's jazz this thing up a little bit. I loved the War Games because it made sense that with a cage comes a top, so you can't climb over because people have been climbing over the fucking cage. And it even, that was rules in the WWF, escape the cage, right? That's why I said, don't just have this fucking cage match if the whole point, a WWF cage match, if the whole point is going to be that a fucking guy comes from outside and interferes. Well, if it's an impossible cage to get into, that's one thing. But if it's easy that everybody climbs over and fucking back and forth, well, then what the fuck does that mean? Make it important. Put a top on the fucking thing. sell the match as this is the ultimate way to settle a score because nobody can leave. It's not climbing out. Somebody's going to get beat. There's no escape in this fucking cage. You can't get in and can't get out. Once it's closed, there's a top on it. That'll close up some of these bullshit WWE cage match loopholes where everybody feels like they're going to get fucked, because you don't want people to think they're going to get fucked on pay-per-view. And then, because of the Memphis cage that they got in the 80s that allowed guys, because here's another thing, both The Undertaker and Kane are 7 feet tall, and Michaels does all his top rope shit and all his fancy shit in a cage match with a top on it. That's why J.J. Dillon got hurt in the War Games, because the top, the Road Warriors tried to do their finish on him, but Hawk was trying to modify because the top was too low, so he kind of came off at a different angle, separated J.J.'s shoulder. Sid powerbombed Pillman on his fucking head because his feet hit the top of the cage. I said, make it bigger and make it like the one they had in Memphis, where it surrounds the ringside area too, because that way guys can come off the top. Michaels can do his crossbody from the top to the floor because there's enough room. The reason why they had that cage in Memphis was because that's the one where Tommy Rich came out from under the ring, and he and Austin Idol, beat up Lawler and shaved his head, right? Well, you can't come from under the ring and still be in a cage if the cage is on the ring. So you make the cage surround the ringside area so that you can do all that fighting and in the match, but at the same time, you have room, but it's got the cover on it, but it's higher, so you got room, but it's inescapable. Nobody can get in or out, which is all the more reason why that it gets heat when the heel somehow gets in it. That was the thought. Once again, am I going too deep here?
No.
Because it's like a lot of people just write fucking matches down. Oh, this would be cool. Let's put, the big hefty guy from the Banana Splits and a member of the Beatles against so-and-so because it'd be funny. Everything has to fit. Everything has to fit the fucking people in the match. Everything has to fit the situation, what you want to get out of it, the points you want to make with the fucking finish. So in this match, once again, in summary, we were able to say this was going to be the big climactic match between The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels in a situation where two men were going to enter, but there was no escape, no way in, no way out. Somebody had to win, somebody had to lose, and there was going to be no way for Shawn Michaels to escape this ass kicking that The Undertaker was going to give him. And he didn't. He's not the one that fucking breached the cage. At the worst possible moment for The Undertaker, his brother appears after the referee's been wiped out, jerks the fucking door off the inescapable cage, goes in and does the damage, and leaves so Michaels can win and go on. After they've had a classic match doing all of their shit, we've created a new gimmick match, and we have made an impact of the highest magnitude with the new guy that we're introducing by coming in, doing the unthinkable, and causing The Undertaker to lose in a main event pay-per-view match. All at the same time. That's why it worked. And the only thing they said, well, what do we call it? Rage in a Cage. I'd used that before. I pitched that. And of course, they had creative services send over. I can't remember. I wish I'd have kept some of these papers. Vince would read them off to us. We didn't all get copies of everything. It'd come on Vince's fucking fax machine and he'd read it off. And, there was a bunch of fucking goofy names because they're the people that brought us Chili McFreeze for Stone Cold Steve Austin. But there was Hell in a Cell. I thought, okay, I can buy that. That sounds cool. Hell in a Cell. Let's do that. That was at Vince's fucking kitchen table one day in fucking, what was it, September-ish of 99, a month or 6 weeks before the pay-per-view.
Well, not 99.
Or 97, I mean, rather. And that's the way that happened. And I didn't get all of my way about Kane that I saw as being more Michael Myers than a superhero. But the gist of it was that he was treated seriously as a main event opponent for the Undertaker from the start. And even then you could play with the entertainment. Because then they said, okay, you found Glenn, you've worked with Glenn, you be Glenn's producer for some of this stuff to get him over. He couldn't wrestle. See, that's the thing. Shitstain, after the pay-per-view, wanted The Undertaker on Monday Night Raw to fucking chokeslam Kane through the ringside announcer's table. Of course he did, right? Which is be absolutely the stupidest thing that could possibly happen. So that's why he was for it. Vince had said that he didn't want him to have a match till WrestleMania. Well, this is October and WrestleMania was the end of March. So we knew we had to stretch this out. So, and Bruce was invested in this also, and he was pitching in a lot of stuff. But the whole idea was that instead of them just getting a fight on Raw the next week, like dipshit wanted, that Undertaker would say that he couldn't bring himself to fight his brother. And that's why the brother's evil manager that used to be involved with the Undertaker would say, then we're going to make you. You're going to be responsible. The blood will be on your hands. Who do we have to fucking get to? What do we have to do to make you fight Kane? And then Kane would come out and start in the middle of matches. All of a sudden, the lights would go out and the red lights would turn on and the music would hit, and here would come Kane. And whoever was in the ring, babyface, heel, fucking indifferent, he would do some damage to somebody until Undertaker agreed. And you can't stop it, Undertaker. More people are going to get hurt. More lives are going to be ruined until you give us what we want. Fight your brother. And so then once you set that up and the people knew what was coming, every week when this would happen, the music, somebody's getting their ass kicked and choke slammed, right? And that's when you can throw in entertainment. Because once you've set this up and once people instantly know without you having to tell them, because they know what's going to happen already, it's not as phony as if you're telling, oh, and by the way, you know what this means? Well, then you're telling them, yeah, this is my phony shit, right? But they know it for themselves. That's when we had the Mexican minis. And that's the one day I said, okay, how about this on TV? Kane's beat up this guy and that guy and come out and done this crazy thing and that fucking chaotic thing. Sonny is the special referee for a 6-man Mexican mini match. And we were in a building that was kind of small for even at that point in time in WWF television. And underneath was where the locker rooms were. And it was a very low ceiling. So I'm there trying to fucking help the Mexican minis and Sonny integrate their personalities because the minis had never worked with Sonny and vice versa. So Sonny's going to leapfrog one of the minis. And the ceiling was so low that she almost hit her head working out this leapfrog spot. But anyway, basically they get in the ring and they do 2 minutes of Mexican mini shit. And Sonny did her leapfrog, and then the fucking place goes black and the red lights and the music hit and the people all shit themselves. That's funny. Now they know what they've been conditioned to what's going to happen every time this happens. But look who's in the ring now. And the fucking Mexican minis scurry everywhere and under the ring and fucking Sonny fucking runs. And none of the minis actually got beat up and Sonny didn't either because they came to the ring and Paul Bearer did the promo or whatever. But the people were going crazy, not knowing whether to laugh or cry, just at the idea that here comes Kane. It was a fucking pop and it was entertaining, but it didn't kill the fucking gimmick, didn't kill the business, didn't make everything look stupid. It was funny in the context of the situation. I loved shit like that. And I loved the early Kane and for the first few years of Kane. And then once they took the mask off and he wasn't disfigured, but he kind of was, but then it was in his heart. And then I liked it even when he could talk with the fucking, the automatic throat gimmick. That was cool that had never been done before. But then all of a sudden he could talk again. Over the next 20 years, they just rewrote his story so much. I hate shit like that because once you've exposed something as being not what you told it was, it never has the same fucking luster. And I've always despised that in movies, TV shows. When I was 7 years old and they changed fucking characters in Bewitched, I fucking got hot because I said, it's not Darren. It's ruined. It's killed for me now. I've always been very literal minded and very serious, but that's also what you need to be when you're examining things from all sides and from a perspective. And that's what you need to do with wrestling. As I've illustrated, you don't just write shit down. You never book a match unless you know the finish. I'm not talking about the exact finish, especially on preliminary matches. I'm talking about you never write a match down unless you know who's going over. And if you book a main event match, you need to have a pretty good idea of the finish in your head. Who's going over and what's the other guy's out? If the heel's going over, how does he get heat on it? How does he make the fuck? If the babyface is going over, what's he foiling? I never booked Smoky Mountain Wrestling matches or big OVW matches unless I knew the finish. And I tried, even though I was asked to pitch in on many, as part of the creative team, a lot of the big WWF matches. We always knew who was going to go over. We may not know how, and Vince may not agree to one of us telling him how until the final minute. And that always made me nervous because I always liked to have the finish set when I booked the fucking match and advertised it. But you always knew who was going to win, who was going to lose, because you can't just fucking do this shit the day of. Well, let's see what we're going to do today. Oh, that's a cool stipulation. Let's write that down. Everything has to work together. And that thought process is what went into Hell in a Cell. And I think that you can see that same thought process, especially in the 90s when Michaels had no thought process, otherwise where can I get more somas, was a lot more complicated and a lot more fitting to the situation than, yeah, Tommy Rich and Buzz Sawyer had a cage like that in Atlanta.